Hello there. I am Jamie Collette, and with me is Sam Piaggio, and we're going to play
Oh,
test partners. Hello, Sam. How you doing, man?
I'm good. Yes.
Sam
Ready
and
to
I.
solve crime.
Yeah, that's right. We're going to create problems and solve them together. Um, Partners is, as you can see, those of you viewing on the screen, a detective storytelling game for exactly two players, which is what we have assembled here. Sam is up there above me, and I am down below. One of us will be a straight shooter, and one will be a total wild card. I wonder who will be whom. Um, Both Sam and I have had a sort of quick skim through these rules. This is a game by Tin Star Games and Steve D. Um, yeah, Sam, have you like read the rules in full or just skimmed or?
I've gone through like how we create all the people that we need for the story,
Yeah.
and then I've gone over how the session or episode uh,
Mhm.
goes, and it's pretty straightforward. Like the tools are definitely there to sort of just like you don't need to go in with a plan. It sort of you can just sort of generate it.
Yeah, that was
And
definitely my feeling reading it too. It is a game built around like spur of the moment generation. In fact, like there's a whole like the main mechanic involves random word generation to give
mm,
us clues, etc. I've similarly sort of read through the rules. I'm by no means an expert, but we will the rule booklet, even though it is in like beta right now, is very pretty, and it actually is very like
it,
easy to follow as you play. So I've just pulled that up now, and we'll just get into it, I guess.
yeah, yeah.
All right. So the opening of this game, it says, "What have we got?" Partners is a storytelling game for exactly two players, and it emulates the genre of police procedural and mystery solving television. Um, the core of Partners is emulating not just solving murder mysteries, but in particular the two person dynamic so often core of these dramas. One figure is a no nonsense, serious person who's continually aggravated by their partner, a strange and unpredictable person who eschews the normal rules of propriety and the common fashion. Um,
And it gives sort of examples of like what sort of shows it's talking about. Like there's sort of like the
yeah.
very obvious almost ones like shows like Bones or
Mm-hmm.
NCIS or like Law and Order
Mm-hmm.
are very much like pretty much straightforward versions of this. But then you can pull the scope out even further. Like I mean, you could probably end up like you do like a Rick and Morty. You could do
Oh yeah, for sure.
like Lucifer. You could do all sorts of things where it's just like two people have to deal with issues,
Yeah,
but
that's it.
they are by design very different people.
Yeah,
Um,
and there are lots of those little like quotes throughout the text of like the where Steve
from
has
shows and stuff like
yeah
that.
yeah mentioned different shows and how they fit into the genre in different ways. And there's also like some really great examples of like what play looks like, just written examples of play, which I found those very useful when reading through the rules as well.
It does a very good job of like framing what it's talking about in ways that sort of like and usually giving multiple examples to sort of cover a lot of ground.
Yeah, and I think one of the most important things to note compared to other storytelling games, role play games, which often assume that there's like one player who's the game master and in charge of the setting
Yes.
and the NPCs, whatever, whilst other players play characters. In this, we're it. We are
Yeah.
both. We are both the setting and the players, and it's a collaborative
Yeah.
building in that way. Um,
There are some. I think there are optional rules for like if you have more people, but it
yeah,
is designed with two people in mind. But you cover a bunch of ground as there's two people, so you could sort of like spread it out to other people if you wanted to do it with more with if you had more people, or you still wanted to play it, but there's three of you or there's four of you or whatever. So
well, that's
they've
it,
got
right? And
ways
like
to do that.
examples of this genre, there are more than two characters in those shows. It's just that the central two are like the
Yeah.
central tension, and it expands out to those. And I think in the multiplayer rules, you can either have people play some of those like secondary characters, like people's superiors or
Mm.
loved ones or whatever, or you can just switch who plays the two main characters scene by scene, which I think is like also the kind of organized chaos that I love.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and so our first step is that we're going to be building the characters for this for our show, our partnership, starting obviously with the partners.
Well, this one's interesting because neither of us we haven't talked about who we're playing, what we're playing. No, we haven't even talked about. Well, we've sort of we haven't decided on which of us is going to be the straight shooter or the wild card.
No, exactly.
But then the more important part is once we have decided that, we're going to do that completely separately. I'll be taking my headphones off and muting myself when we put these characters together, so that when we just come back and you're just putting these two completely separate people together and having to think, okay, well, why are these people partners? And that's kind of how you get that dynamic of like these two completely divergent people working together in this solving these problems.
And I think that's what I really like about Partners is that it isn't just like role-playing two cops on a team together. Steve throughout the text and in an appendix has like a statement about some of those shows are politically or ethically grey in terms of them being propaganda for police, and that this isn't that. You could play police in it and that's fine. Policemen can be heroes, but certainly in our current political climate there's a lot of questions about whether that's true or not. And so similarly, you might choose to play a dog and that can talk and their owner or whatever. This game is about solving mysteries regardless.
I think the example of play that one of the characters is a dog, and then also in the example as we go through step by step, like one of the characters is an astronaut. So they end up doing a sci-fi show.
Yeah. Well, that's it. And we don't know anything about the characters that each other want to bring. In fact, I don't even know about the character I want to bring, so I'm going to just be doing it in response to whatever I read on these play sheets. Do you want to read that section, choose who will be the straight shooter and who will be the wild card? I'm on page 10. I think it'd be good to give people that context.
Very much the step one of building your partners. So you'll have a chance to swap roles between episodes, which we've mentioned. These characters are essentially shared, but you need to pick one for creation. They're both going to help to solve mysteries, but in their own unique style. So if you're choosing the straight shooter, it's if you want to play characters who care. They care about other people, about what people might think of them. The characters on the straight shooter sheet are all malcontents. They feel things very strongly, deeply, and when things are not how they should be, they must act. You choose the wild card if you want to play a character that doesn't care that much. Not about the world, and certainly not about what other people say. The characters on the sheet are content with things the way they are, or aren't likely to do anything if they aren't bothered. Of course, every now and then, something niggles. And niggles are the interesting part.
Yeah, nice. And I think it's interesting, there's like a little note here about the wild card isn't always the one wearing the loud Hawaiian shirt. Sometimes the inspector can be the wild card, like Inspector Morse in Morse, because he's the socially inept outcast one, even though he's the detective. Anybody can be the wild card or the straight shooter, depending on the thing. Do you have any feelings, Sam? Do you want to play someone who cares or someone who niggles?
I'm not. I don't have a preference really.
Do we want to flip a coin and stick to the, or why don't we deal each other cards and the highest card has to be the wild card? Or do you? Let's do it. Let's lean into the chaos. All right. I'll draw a card first. I'm just going to drag it from the deck that we got on Roll20 onto the splash that I made. Here we go. Well, we didn't discuss whether aces are high or low, but I got the ace of hearts, and I feel like it's a high card. This is where you pull another ace, and we have to go again.
Oh, come on. Card, why? I don't know why the card's doing what it's doing.
Oh, yeah, it's revealed on top. There you go. You got the
It's
9.
revealed on top,
dimes.
and then another thing moved somewhere else on the screen for me, and I don't know why it's happening. I feel aces are high. Like,
I feel aces are high too. All right, let's do it. I'll recall those cards back into the deck. And I guess I'm making a wild card then.
Yeah.
All right. Well, as it says in the rules, it's time for us to not talk about anything else and look at our respective character sheets and create our wild card and straight shooter. Do you want to take your headphones off and mute yourself?
I will, yes.
And
I
once I'm done, I'll sort of like do a wave, or
make
I'll send you a
motion,
message
I will
in Zoom
hopefully
as well.
Yeah, that'll work.
That should be easy.
All right.
All right. See you
Have fun.
shortly. Let's not spend an hour on this.
It's only 3 questions. How long could it take?
All right.
All right.
All right. Sam's out of here. It's just you and me now, imaginary audience. Let's make ourselves a wild card. So I need to find out 3 things. I need to find out that before I was a detective, I did something else. You can tell I'm the wild card because of something, and deep down I respect the straight shooter because of something else. Now I'm just gonna have a quick look. Tell them to answer the questions. What did I do before a detective? This doesn't just mean you can be young and out of the police academy. If that's an idea you like, it just means that your past informs your decision. Okay, why join the academy in the first place? How do we tell that we're the straight shooter? The wild card is not just a reason, it's how we can tell. The things you say, how you dress, how you put your feet up on the desk. It's all these and more. Okay. And what about your counterpart? Do you in fact respect? And we know nothing about them, and we've got to decide what we respect about them, despite knowing nothing. All right. Wild card. I'm gonna put my text in a nice bright color. Let's go with this blue, and make sure the text is big enough. Let's go with the 32. Yeah, that looks all right. Before I was a detective, I don't want to go with like an animal. I want to be a person. I've got like 2 ideas pulling in my brain. One is to go like a bit sci-fi and be like cyborgy kind of. The other one is a little bit like The Mentalist or White Collar playing a con man. I think I'm, you know what, I'm a wild card. Let's go with both. Both. Before I was a detective, I was a con man. Who made money fleecing. I'm actually gonna. The rich. I'm gonna put those in capitals. I don't know why. And then there was an accident, and they had to replace parts of my body with machinery. No. Alright, it's too big. Alright, we're going down to 20. So I used to be a con man who made their money fleecing the rich. Then there was an accident. And they had to replace parts of my body with machinery. You can tell I'm the wild card because I'm part robot and now let's put this back in the first box. And I have no respect for the rules / laws, and will lie myself into a corner given any opportunity. Deep down, I respect the straight shooter because... So is this because they know how to follow the rules, or is it because they let me get away with it? Like, that's kind of the Suits thing, right? Where Harvey takes this wild card on board and they become like this power lawyer team, even though he's, hasn't passed the bar. I think that's interesting to me. I respect the straight shooter because they brought me back, right? Like, I would have died, but I think I'm a bit Suicide Squadded here. Like, they brought me back so that I could help them solve crime. But if I try to break free, I'm going to get blown up or whatever. So deep down, I respect the straight shooter because they're the only one who thinks it is unfair that I am being used under duress to help solve mysteries. All right. I'll send Sam a message. All right. My good man Sammy, are you done?
I am, yes.
All right. Well, then I believe it's time for us to swap sheets and find out what each other have written, because I went in a completely different direction than anything that I had in my head.
Oh, fantastic. I had one, like, it was like I was just writing. I'd written down the answers, and it was all very straightforward. It was all very reasonable. And then I went, I'm going to add an extra word to the first answer.
Okay.
And it
I'm looking forward to seeing the word.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna switch over to the straight shooter card, and you're welcome to have a look at the wild card, and we'll compare notes.
You put it on screen, don't you? So,
yeah, I'm switching over just so they can see it on screen.
Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna read through this stuff for the straight shooter. Oh, why don't you read out what you wrote?
All right. I originally wrote, before I was a detective, I was just another punk kid making trouble for myself.
Okay.
And I don't know why I did it, but I went back and I changed it to, I was just another punk rabbit kid making trouble for myself.
Okay.
You can tell that I'm the straight shooter because I need to do things by the book. I need that structure.
Okay. Okay.
And deep down, I respect the wild card because no one works harder or does more to get the job done.
All right, you're gonna love this, Sam. You ready?
Yes, I am.
All right. I mean, the stream's already heard this, but before I was a detective, I was a con man who made money fleecing the rich. And then there was an accident, and they had to replace parts of my body with machinery.
Yes, I love it.
So what happened was I had two ideas. One was the con man idea from like White Collar, and the other was a cyborg. And I was just like, pineapple pen, exactly. You can tell I'm the wild card because I'm part robot, and I have no respect for the rules or laws, and will lie myself into a corner given any opportunity. And deep down, I respect the straight shooter because they're the only one who thinks it's unfair that I'm being used under duress to help solve mysteries. This is like a Suicide Squad situation. They will take away my robot body if I don't solve crime.
The $6 million man.
That's it. That's it.
You gotta pay. You got a debt now. You gotta pay it back.
That's it. I love it. All right. So now we need to find what does this mean? This punk rabbit kid. Why do I keep pulling that up? Here we go. So we come back together and make sense of it all. Only when we do this will we know what our show is really about, and then name our show and characters. To help with tone, you can pick a time slot or network as well. Yeah, interesting. I love this note that Steve's put as well. Names always come last, because naming people is traditionally one of the trickiest things to do when you're playing games. I love it.
It definitely has like that sort of RoboCop, like I said, $6 million man kind of vibe.
Mm-hmm.
Given that you are working off, because you owe either money or they own you, literally own parts of you.
Mm-hmm. So you were a punk rabbit kid, whatever that means. Are you now like a traditional detective? Like, are you law enforcement, or are you like a private detective? Or
I hadn't sort of confirmed it one way or other. I left it, I wanted to leave it more open. So it could be, he could easily be like, he was regular police, or he was working as a detective, or potentially, like, if we're talking about this, if it is sort of like, it could be some like kind of corporation that fixed you.
Yeah,
like it's sort of this dystopian.
Yeah, if we go,
we
could take it a bit cyberpunky and
and it's sort of like they were like a detective for this company, and now they're like, this is your new partner, and he's like, I'm sorry, you what now?
Yeah, so you've got
You're doing what? That's not good.
Mega corporate overlords to answer to.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I'm into that for sure. I have to ask: is the rabbit thing literal?
I was imagining it was literal.
Okay. So we're talking.
But I wasn't sure if it was like, because anthropomorphic animals are just a thing, or if it was kind of like, he's just an animal, we don't explain it.
Are you an animal, or are you an anthropomorphic animal? That's a big...
I was imagining anthropomorphic.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a bit wild for the straight shooter to just be a rabbit.
Like, everyone else is... Yeah, it's like, the rabbit is the only one that understands me. Pat. That robot guy keeps talking to that rabbit. It's weird.
Yeah. So is this like... is it Zootopia? Is that the one with the rabbit cop lady?
Yes. I didn't even think of that.
Or is this oh god, there's that anime that's on. They just did a second season where there's like a wolf detective guy who's in love. I haven't watched it. My friends have told me about it, but there's like sort of anthropomorphic animal.
Let's think it's either is everyone animals, or is it just this guy?
Can be somewhere like in between, where like,
or is it like so is it like a mix?
Yeah, because I don't think my person is part animal, part cyborg. I think they're like part human, part cyborg.
Yeah, yeah.
But I don't think I think it's more interesting if it's not unusual that you're like part rabbit.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think even if it was just like if he was the only one, I don't think anyone would have treated it as odd. Because like if they're the wild card, then maybe, but they're the straight shooter, so it's like that's who they are.
Yeah.
And it could just be a mix. Like if we're going into a more sort of futuristic cyberpunky thing, it could just be that there are like anthropomorphic animals integrated.
Yeah, exactly.
Just a thing that's just a fact about society that no one really.
Yeah, regardless, like our world doesn't have to be Earth in the future. It can just be, well, in this world there are humans and there are not humans that are still people. I love the idea of imagining what a punk rabbit kid looks like. It's like, like a young bunny with, rings through their ears all the way down in a leather jacket. It's amazing. All right. What else do we have to do at this stage? We need to create names for ourselves and potentially our show.
Yes. Name for the show.
It's going to go either way because, like, very commonly these shows are sometimes just named after the two characters or the kind of. So we're doing like cyberpunk corporate crime kind of solving stuff. What rating are we looking at? Like as it says, rating or time slot or network. Like, is this a gritty cyberpunk or is this a Disney cyberpunk take?
I imagine it probably leans more gritty than Disney, but we don't necessarily have to go like as a deep dive or anything if we don't want to.
Yeah, I don't think I'm interested in doing like the R-rated lots of blood and guts everywhere and a sex scene twice an episode or whatever. I think this is like more the MA sort of.
We're not pitching it to HBO or anything.
Yeah, so. It's not an HBO drama, but it is. But it's got that like serious element to it.
Despite. Yeah, like we could, if it was sort of like ballpark it around like Law and Order, where it's like there is sometimes violence or whatever.
Yeah, serious things. Yeah,
but it's not. But that's not the focus, and it's not. Like lingered on.
Yeah. What's that
in that way?
What's that show where like they can upload their brains to it's based on a book up to like stacks or whatever and then put them in a new body or whatever.
Altered Carbon.
I'm imagining that sort of era of technology / cyberpunkiness.
Yeah, sure.
Where the people on the streets are like they don't have access to spaceships to get to another world, like average people.
I mean, if we're going cyberpunk, then you definitely have like a massive gulf between the haves and the have-nots.
That's
like,
it.
That's just part and parcel.
Yeah, for sure. All right, cool. So now we need some names. I'm gonna pull up. Name generator. This is not the one I wanted.
So in terms of name for show, so I had a thought of Hair Trigger.
Oh, that's very funny.
Hair is spelled HARE.
That's very funny. I think we're definitely going with it. Because I was trying to think of like tortoise and hare. I was going in the same direction with like puns.
Yeah.
So it's Hair Trigger. I mean, does that mean my character's name has to be Trigger, right? Or were you going there?
I have to. I don't know if it like has to be, but Probably.
Yeah. Because I just pulled up the Cyberpunk nickname generator, and it is all just like one words like this. We've got boost and chalk and route and switch. And I think trigger is it's too good.
Is it written hair/trigger?
Yeah, yeah. And it's got, it could be that convention, it's like a double slash, which makes it feel like more cyberpunk, I think.
Yeah.
It's like HTTP hair dash trigger. Amazing. Alright. I'm gonna freehand my name because I want it to fit on the cool diagonal that Steve's put on these character sheets. Because it's so... Trigger.
I feel like hair is a nickname.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like the straight shooter has to have like a more respectable name as well, right? Amazing. Well done, Sam. You found it. People who don't already should follow Sam on Twitter at @TheRealSammyP, and you get more of these quality puns all day, every day.
I'm gonna have to, that's gonna put me on the spot, and I'm okay with it.
Yeah, you do post puns all the time. I'm into it. Okay, are we ready for next step?
Yeah, I'm just finishing naming. He is Francis Hare Lapin.
I love it. Yeah.
Let me see if I can. Oh, I can. I can just type it in and then rotate the thing.
Oh, you can. Oh, that's in. I think this is great that the straight shooter has like perfect lettering, Francis Hare Lapin, and over on the wild card you've got my ridiculous handwriting. Okay.
There we go.
All right. Now I believe the next step, we swap sheets and go back to separating. Right. Swap sheets, and we're going to create one of the secondary characters.
I don't think it needs to be. We don't. It's not like we have to sort of like go away. I think it's just like you, because it's also just done a bit quicker. I don't. You're just making secondary characters.
I see. The point is just that we do it so the other person can't see, and there's no consultation, because that makes it interesting and unpredictable.
Yeah, I think like if you're thinking about doing this like in person, there'd be a thing where it's like you'd actually sort of walk away, and because you have to put a bit more thought into the thing. Mm-hmm. But at this point, you've come back and you're sort of just doing it quickly. But I think really, in the end, also you could just like, you do you kind of thing. Like,
yeah,
if you want it to be even to be much more separate, then you can do that. But if you just want to quickly get it done, you can do that as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and we just do the next one because there's two, and then we swap back, and then we do the final one.
Yeah, I was just checking that. So we pick one of the two. It doesn't have to be. So you don't have to fill in the superior. You can choose the superior or the oddball, and then we swap back and do the second one ourselves. So on your sheet, I can fill in either the subordinate or the touchstone.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Do we want to do like a super quick rundown of what these four characters are before we fill them in?
Yeah. They're sort of part, in a way, like, it's, what it says on the tin kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure.
But, because I think it was like, because the superior is your superior. It's the person in charge.
Yeah.
I think they use the example, Captain Holt from Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Mm-hmm.
The captain in any police procedural ever, really. The one who represents, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the captain, because obviously you don't have to be in the police force, but Usually the important part is that the straight shooter has a bit of a sort of a storied relationship with the superior, while the wild card, because they don't particularly care, aren't as affected.
Yeah.
So using the Brooklyn Nine-Nine, you've got Amy just hanging on whatever Captain Holt says, and I've just immediately blanked on his name. Peralta just not caring, but also, but then
to be fair, they're all wild cards in that show, but
they do make the point where, because you can change who is what, episode by episode. There are definitely episodes where those two roles are just hard swapped.
Yeah, that's definitely, or even within an episode in something like that.
Yeah, and then the subordinate is essentially the opposite. Not necessarily, it doesn't have to be like actually subordinate to you, but could just be like another person who you work with. But
I think what's really interesting about the way this is structured is the reason these characters are on the same sheet. So the reason that the wildcard has the superior and the oddball is because the wildcard's very rarely dealing with those people themselves, and so the person playing the wildcard is most likely to play the superior and the oddball off of the straight shooter.
Yeah.
Because it's the wildcard does something, and it's the straight shooter and the superior who get into a scene about it.
Yes.
Or when something needs solving, the straight shooter goes to the oddball, but the wildcard's like, oh, I don't want to deal with another oddball. I'm the oddball. Like, give me the, I think that's really interesting.
Whereas, the straight shooter just kind of expects the subordinate to do their job.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the wild card, it's like, you are the person I will mess with now.
Yes.
Whereas the touchstone is like because it's about relating to a person, the straight shooter does it very well. The wild card does not.
Yeah, that's it, right? The touchstone is...
and they make the point that, the touchstone is on the straight shooter's sheet because their relationship doesn't change. It is this set thing. Whereas with the wild card, it's all over the place.
Yeah. Okay, cool. All right, let's do it. Let's make each other a secondary character. I am on the straight shooter sheet, and I think I have a bit of an idea. So just fill in these questions. I think I'm gonna make this one. Let's go back to our friend. Fantasy name generators. This one's pretty good. Put it this way. No, doesn't sound good. There we go. All right, I'm done. You still going, Sam?
I'm just finishing up.
All right. What?
The first one I wrote was really hard to get the text to line up.
Yeah.
And then the second one, I was like, stuff it. I'll fix it afterwards. And then it immediately, when I clicked off it, just slotted in exactly the right place. And I was just like, oh, you son of, all right.
That's it. All right.
So who did you pick?
I made us a subordinate.
Ooh.
Yeah. So the person who does what everyone tells them. Their name is Blunder Lock. And the wildcard mocks Blunder because Blunder is a much more petty criminal than they were. So I'm imagining this as like an informant kind of character. This is someone...
Right, yeah.
But they are actually good at knowing people and things because they have their ear to the ground. Yeah. So Blunder's like that kind of criminal contact who just knows everyone and everything. And I think they do have like some relationship. The relationship with the straight shooter is that like they'll give them the information they want. Like it's their informant, but I think the antagonism is between them and the wild card because they probably they knew each other in that past life of Triggers as well.
Yeah. Well, I made the oddball.
Fun.
Is our tech.
Yep.
Clive Freeman.
Okay.
And they're not a detective because they are far too busy tinkering with new tech.
I love it.
But they get into danger when they try to test new gear in the field.
Of course they do. Good old Clive loves bringing out the new tech. Is this Clive themselves testing the gear in the field, or like testing things that aren't fully tested by giving them to us?
I did not specify.
Good.
It was like both, either.
Yes.
It doesn't matter.
I love
it. And again, like, because, they're the person who works with the tech, so they've got a decent working relationship with the wild card, but with the straight shooter, it's a bit more
amazing,
tense.
Yeah, that's it. All right, and now we swap back and we create our final characters in the roster, right? So I'm making the superior who tells everyone what to do, and we have some idea what this is based on our previous discussion. Unless I want to throw a huge curveball, but I don't in this particular case. Though I think I know the kind of name I'm going to go for, and it's good, that will put some setting in as well. It's going to be... I think anyone who sees this kind of name is going to know immediately what's going on. I think this fits under M/MA. just gonna remove the grid here so that we can see a little bit better. That's a bit better. Alright, I've got our superior.
I have the touchstone.
Alright. I'm gonna go first this time. Oh, did I go
Yep.
first last time? I can't remember.
I don't know.
Okay, but I want to read this first because I think yours will actually be sweet in some way. Whereas this is mostly lots of jokes. All right, the superior. The superior tells everyone what to do. Their name is Edwin Rockwood III, and the straight shooter resents me because I'm so rich and powerful, and I own their furry ass. But I'm actually good at being unpredictable and extremely dangerous because everyone has to do what I say. I'm Edwin Rockwood III, after all. Yeah, I don't think our superior is a good person. I mean, it's cyberpunk. Whoever's at the top, they're just they're not good people. And this is like.
I just realized I didn't give my touchstone a name, but it's Trigger's sister.
Okay, yeah, cool.
And they're not a detective because, unlike Trigger, they avoided the life of crime. They got a job and started a family.
Okay.
They can get in danger when someone wants to get at the partners.
Yeah, right.
Sometimes because family gets caught.
That's it. They get caught in the crosshair.
Might actually add that. That's a.
All right. Trigger's sister. I mean, you can work out a name for them. Whether it's, if they're like a family person, they might not have such a cyberpunky name.
Yeah, I wasn't sure how that would, but I was like, because you can always just come up with the names when the person.
That's true. Yeah.
Becomes story relevant.
Yeah, absolutely. If you don't have something off the top of your head, we can leave that one blank and fill it in when it comes up.
Yeah. So I think
maybe put in the name section just like Trigger's sister in brackets, and we could work out the name later.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Cool.
Okay. Cool. So we have our roster of characters. What's it been? About an hour? And this game rockets along. It's really nice. It's really good. Very, very clear.
Yeah, I mean, we've in an hour we have 6 characters, a setting, a title of show.
Yeah.
Which means we've always kept ahead because the first part of the show Bible is forget the name for now. I was like, oh, whoops.
Well, it did say in an earlier step for us to name the show, so there might be a slight contradiction in terms. Game is in beta testing after all.
Yeah, I think it's yeah. I mean, I think it's certainly fine to start thinking about it at that point.
Yeah, maybe I misread it. It does say in step 4, name your show and name your characters, but that's all right.
Oh yeah, fair.
That's okay. We're up to the next step, which is our show Bible, right? Got caught by this interesting note here. Some mystery shows the supporting cast changes as often as the murder suspects. In some cases, the wild card will have a new straight shooter every single season, and so if you can't decide on particular options, there is like this option to have the superior change, etc., etc. But I think,
Yeah.
given the genre that we sort of landed in, that it makes sense for there to be these like stable characters
Yeah.
rather
And
than
it's sort of like, it's going to depend on what you want to do with it. But the fact that you can do it is flexible enough to handle that is
Yeah.
pretty fantastic.
That's it. Because like it's the difference between a show like Firefly, where you've got that stable like 6 or 7 characters who move from town to town, whereas like if you
Yeah.
have like a more traditional Western, there's like usually the cowboy who goes it alone, moving from town to town,
Yeah.
and their
Or it's like,
superior
you know,
is like the sheriff of each town usually, except for
Or-
the twist episode where the sheriff's the bad guy.
Yeah. Or in like any show where like the actor leaves
Yeah. Oh yeah.
and they
for sure.
suddenly have to like recast certain roles. I can't remember what's the one. There's one. It's like a white guy comes to work for the police on like a Caribbean island or something, but it's been like a different guy every like 2 seasons or something. Every time I see it come up, like I remember this show. I don't remember that person. What's okay? But like the other people have sort of stuck around. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
All
if
right.
you want to sort of get that feel.
I have moved over to the show Bible here. We already
Yes.
know our show is called Hair Trigger. We need to now answer these. I assume we don't like just trade off answers for this. This is actually like a bit more collaborative in this.
Yeah, I think this is just we just sort of. I mean, as we've shown at this point, we do have a much bit clearer idea
Mm-hmm.
of what's happening. So this is more codifying, I guess, some of those things, or but we've already got a pretty good sense, I think, probably about most of these things at this point. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like this first thing we need is like a blurb. It's 25 words or less of what the show is about. Try and make it short and punchy. Yeah.
sort of like the elevator pitch.
Like excuse me, I accidentally hit the wrong button and got jumped into my homepage, which is luckily nothing too embarrassing, just a video game that I like to play.
I'm trying to think. I'm just
Yeah, well, my question for you, because you know your link to the superior is more direct at this stage, right?
yeah.
Is like how close to like are we criminal enforcers, or are we seen as criminal enforcers, or are we seen as like law enforcers?
I feel like I'm picturing it sort of like, you know, in that cyberpunk sense when like corporations become almost like governments, even countries
Yeah.
unto themselves.
Yeah.
So it's like they have their own internal sort of investigators, I guess. But at the same time, it's like on the surface, it's supposed to be like, yeah, we deal with stuff that's happened to the corporation. But then sometimes it can be a bit sort of like,
But like, yeah, in
start
terms of
getting-
the
start
social
getting-
strata of our world, we are you and now me by default are on the up and up, in the sense that like we work for the powers that be.
yeah.
Whether
powers that
the
be-
powers that be are good or bad guys is like not really the point.
I'm trying to think. I had an idea for the blurb, and I'm trying to think how to word it.
I guess my question is, what are the kind of mysteries we're solving as well? Is it murders? Is it?
I'm imagining it's sort of like it'd be part like standard like police stuff and part like corporate, like counter corporate espionage.
Because
But there
that's
might
it,
be,
right?
like-
Like my character was a con man and has been brought back in as an expert, like brought back to life basically as an expert. So that has to be the sort of target, right? That corporate espionage sort of level stuff, which can involve murder certainly. But it definitely feels like it's like trying to solve cleverly planned crimes, not crimes of passion etc. Like we're not really about helping people in trouble necessarily.
It could be like sort of like trying to do that within the confines of what we have to do.
Yeah, I get the feeling both of us have made characters with hearts of gold. You know, like I said, Trigger lies their way into a corner, but they were fleecing rich people, right? Like they're not. That I think they have a bit of a Robin Hood complex.
Hang on, I don't know if that comes up for you, but I just put a thing in the about.
You sure did. All right, I'll read what you wrote. When corporations
see if you think of that.
When corporations control everything, even your own body, sometimes all you can do is whatever good you can get away with. I love it. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah,
perfection.
I was like, I could feel that, like the gem of that. But I was like, how words need to put it in words that people can read.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's like characters who want to be the characters from Leverage, right? They want to be stealing from the rich and giving to the poor, but they live in a world where that's not an option. You have to work for the rich because they can follow your every move.
It's sort of show where like there could be this overarching, like there's like a plot for the whole thing where it's suddenly discovering just how bad things are for oh no, we're actually it's like it's a season long realization of, wait, are we the bad guys?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that's absolutely where we are at. Like the Rockwood Company or whoever it is we work for. It's probably
season 2 is just straight up regular cyberpunk where they've quit.
quite possibly, and they're still solving crimes, but it's against their old superior, maybe.
Yeah, change all the people.
Cool. So episode hooks is our next section. Mysteries need to arrive at the door, metaphorically or otherwise, of the partners, and this helps us decide how our episodes usually begin. Broadly, this happens in one of 4 ways. And we can draw from the deck and get a suit if we want to.
I feel like we're assigned cases at this point.
Yeah, that's it, right? Yeah, so our option is assigned cases, clients come to us, something bad happened, or a friend in need. I think in this case, it's assigned cases, but it's not in the way of like a cop sergeant giving us a case file, like in Law and Order. This is more like we hear from Edwin Rockwood III that like
Rockwood's like, this has happened, find out how and stop it.
That's it. Yeah, for sure. It's rather than a friend in need, it's a really, really rich person in need.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Yeah. Let's put that as we're assigned cases. Justice is provided by, as mentioned, police stories have it easy. The hooks are assigned automatically, and just as simply, the episode ends when the suspect is hauled away in handcuffs, usually with a confession, etc. What is justice in an episode of Hair Trigger?
I feel like we could, because this one is one that can change episode by episode.
Yeah, for sure.
So why not? Particularly, and also as you go into the easy difficult actions, with this one we can just draw for, just to
exactly, and
just to see how it works using that mechanic.
That's it. Like as you say, this is a preferred option, but it can change between episodes. So why don't you draw a card for us, Sam? I'll be suspensefully waiting.
I got diamonds.
Diamonds. So here's what really happened: is the option by default. Where's this? Here's what really happened is slightly easier than the guilty party being spooked. All it takes is running through the flashback with everyone gathered together. So it's sort of like that Nero Wolf kind of thing, or even Poirot does this, like everyone in the room together. Yeah. And if it doesn't provoke a confession, the self-implication will come through.
You're explaining to them what happened and who was actually guilty. And
yeah, exactly. If we go through the list of everything we've discovered, and that should make it obvious, or the person will confess themselves in being confronted with undeniable evidence. I like it. Get everyone in the room where it happened. All right. what does this mean? It is easy for us to. So every detective or pair of detectives have their own style.
So this is like the easy actions are things that we can. It's effortless for us to do. So there's like the table which we'll draw cards for, and so it might be that we're really good at like searching people and places. We're really good at getting criminal records. We're really good at whatever. But then there's on the flip side, there's stuff which is more difficult. And I think from memory, the way it works is when you're setting up a scene, if you do a scene that requires you to do something that you're not good at, you can't use that one of those three actions for one or two scenes following.
Okay, I see. So we get to choose these or draw randomly. What if we like choose one each and get the third one randomly? How's that sound?
Yeah, that sounds good.
So something that like makes sense for your character to be easily accessible to them, and then we can find out what chaos deals our way. Patrick Jane, I love that show, The Mentalist.
No, it's if you use a difficult action, you have to wait 3 more scenes before you can do another difficult action.
Ah, I see. So you can only do like 1 or 2 scenes of the difficult actions.
Yeah. So usually there's like I think it's like 12 scenes per episode, broken into 3 acts, and so essentially you can really only do the difficult actions once per act, or once, or
I see.
You can only do it 4 times per episode, kind of thing.
Yeah. Cool. And so easy ones are like ones we can lean on more often, or do we get like some sort of benefit when they come up?
I think they're sort of. I think they might more sort of like frame how we investigate. It's sort of like that's what you're good at, so that's what you sort of like, that's what you normally, when doing investigation, that's your style of investigation. Whereas the other ones are like, well, if you really need to, and then everything else is just sort of like kind of a bit more standard. I don't.
Okay. I'm just reading here, the thing about the asterisks are that we should only have one of those to be easy at most, because otherwise the detectives start to feel magical, because they're the like Sherlock or Lie to Me kind of characters where they can really like work out a lot of information.
Yeah, it's sort of like you could do it with all 3, but you need to know what you're getting into.
Yeah, that's when you're Sherlock, and it becomes about the character's tiresomeness with, or disdain for solving crime, despite the fact that they
like you can certainly do, like, you can do an interesting Sherlock show.
Oh yeah.
But you need to be aware that that's what you're doing. You can't just like play it normally. So it's just sort of making sure you're aware of that.
Yeah, I'm kind of feeling like deduce intimate truths is the con man thing.
Yeah.
Right. Reading through this list, none of them are quite. I mean, have countless contacts is kind of like the old criminal background thing, but I kind of want to lean on the subordinate for that. Right.
True. Yeah.
We already sort of established that. Whereas, like, a lot of people think my character's dead, I think, and or yeah, but I like deduce intimate truths as like, if you lie your way into a situation, you get intimate information about people and things.
Yeah. I'm thinking interviewing people is one of the other ones.
Yeah. That sounds good to me. Like the two of us together. Yeah.
I'm pretty good at that.
Yeah.
I will draw a card for the other one.
All right, let's do it.
And I got to interview people, so I'm going to draw another card.
Yep, just draw another card.
Expert academic knowledge.
Interesting.
So what was the one you said again?
Deduce intimate truths.
That's right. I knew it was one of them.
Expert academic knowledge. I feel like this comes through what you were talking about with the oddball character, right? Is the techie
Yeah, well,
and sorry, go.
it's also just like we work for the corporations. We have resources.
Yeah, that's it. That's
So that
absolutely
probably is-
it.
It's like you need an expert. There's someone work on stuff.
Yeah.
Go talk to them.
Yeah, if we want to know, oh, how does that kind of car work? We just like put it into our database, and it's
Yeah.
like, oh, the Rockwood Company XXX
Yeah.
works this way.
Yeah, we make that.
Yeah, exactly. TRC cares about you. All right, cool. Yeah, I think that makes sense to me that we're good at those areas.
On the other one, I think we're not good at appealing to the public.
Yeah, no. Not if we're working for the corpse.
No.
Then yeah, the people do not like us. Right, so this is off the same list, right?
Yeah.
I think we're fine at medical or financial. Yeah, and similarly, I don't feel like either of us are like, Sherlocky or super detective-y. Correct me if I'm wrong. So I'm feeling like maybe making great leaps of logic.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Is it that, or is it? Yeah, no. I think I don't want seeding the smallest details, because that can be like. I think we're good at like footwork generally, right? Like not good.
Yeah,
at,
I don't like I said.
or we do a lot of footwork, whether or
Yeah.
not we're good at it. I think so. I'd rather that one be on the table a bit more than making great leaps of logic. I think that's something that happens rarely for us. We have to put our nose to the grindstone and actually.
Yeah. Let's put the work in. You can't sort of.
That's it. And that's something you said
don't
about
just
my
mind
character.
palace
as
your
well.
way into solutions.
Yeah.
The random one is that we're also not good at following or finding people.
Interesting. Okay.
It makes me think that this is where they live is just this dense, sprawling
Yeah.
metropolis that it's like if someone it's not difficult to lose yourself in. Like
yeah, right. And I think that says like quite a lot about the setting as well, because one thing that's like a bit of a cyberpunk trope that immediately rules out is like everyone being microchipped or whatever.
Yeah, like I would imagine there's like the nicer parts of town probably have a lot of like, surveillance, and they have all this other stuff.
Yeah.
But it's like you don't have to go far to get into a not that.
Yeah, exactly.
And suddenly it's just dense, compact. There's 1,001 place like bolt holes you could someone could hold up in.
And 1,000,001 faces to get mistaken with. Yeah.
And it's just like they just get lost. So
yeah, I like it.
Yeah. It's
all right. And then
so plot arcs and ongoing themes is again you can draw a card, and there's a table with which broken into suits. So the suggested plot arcs catch the big bad, discover the truth, get back to freedom or growth and insight.
Yeah, right. Okay. And it's interesting because I think these plot arcs are usually character dependent in a lot of ways as well. Like what Patrick Jane wants in The Mentalist to catch the big bad is very different to what the detectives want in that. But they end up trying to help him catch the big bad because they become caring about him. Yeah, interesting.
I think Mentalist is one of the example ones for catching the big bad.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Oh yeah, there you go. Red John in The Mentalist, Moriarty in Sherlock. Yeah, for sure. Doug Judy in Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Big Bad is that's attributing a lot of capability to Doug Judy.
You know, some nemesis is work differently to others.
That's right.
Um, yeah, and they sort of and they just because again they sort of talk about this game being very much like you could do it as just like a one shot, and
Yeah.
so then the plot arc is really just like episodic.
Yeah.
But you could also do it as like a full on. You could do an episode. You could do a whole season, and then you could have your plot arc. You know, as you said, like Mentalist, it's overall is about getting this guy, but episode by episode, it might have like an episode arc might be different to the overall plot arc.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'm leaning for this. I'm leaning towards Discover the Truth.
I absolutely am too. I think where we've
Yeah.
been heading towards, and like you were saying, like season 1 might be them working for the corporation, but by season 2 or whatever, like that is classic Discover the Truth. I think my character thinks that his plot arc is get back to freedom.
Yeah.
Because the whole the sort of Suicide Squad thing, but that might. But discovering the truth might change that, or vice versa. Like, once they're free, they might care too much about discovering the truth at that point to want to give up. And I think that's interesting. I think that what's at the core of the series is certainly discovering the truth.
The themes similar have like another 4, and the themes being count on comeuppance, the thin detecting line, rough justice, and society lies bleeding.
Interesting. They're very evocative names, but I'm not sure I quite understand them at a look. So let's go a quick read. Count on comeuppance is like drawing room mysteries. Sometimes the murderer is justified in striking out in search of vengeance or however, but they always have a great sin, whether it's pride or and they've got the blood on their hands.
It's also sort of like a show that would be doing count on comeuppance. So it's like, you know that by the end of that episode, they'll have got the person, they'll have wrapped up the mystery. It's not about like, you know, whereas another show it might be like the whole season is hunting this one serial killer.
Yeah,
where it's
I feel like we're not
at the end of Miss Marple's going to work out who did the thing.
Yeah,
and then next episode it's a different thing.
Yeah, I feel like we're not in that territory right now.
No, probably. And I think it's just sort of like I think they just kind of just get more gritty and dark as you go down.
Ah, I see.
So thin detecting line is a bit more shades of grey. Rough justice is like, which might be where we're at. I think
makes things seeking justice. The law gets in their way. Many so-called agents of the law are just as evil as the criminals. That thin line is thoroughly tainted, and few can tell the good from the bad. This is where you find the good cops in Homicide, the bad cops of The Shield. Yeah, interesting. And then step even further along the line of moral greys is Society Lies Bleeding. Here it's not really about good and evil blurring because those things no longer exist. There's just trouble and delay. Yeah, I don't feel like we're quite at that.
Yeah, that was the feeling. Like Society Lies Bleeding feels like it's again because it's like it's just like you're sort of stepping down into sort of how gritty you want the show to be, and I don't know if that Society Lies Bleeding was what we were talking about. So rough justice.
It feels like our character's search for some sort of justice isn't necessarily hopeless.
Yeah.
I think. And that seems to be what Society Lies Bleeding is. It's interesting. The game mentions SVU in Society Lies Bleeding because there will always be another sex offender or whatever. But it's interesting because it's sort of both that and the count on comeuppance, because the detectives always catch someone each, you know, like they solve that mystery episode by episode.
Yeah, and that's the thing, you can kind of like blend them together. These aren't sort of like hard and fast.
Yeah.
You know, issues. They're just sort of like guiding tools.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, let's lock in Rough Justice, and then obviously we're sort of can play
This
between them.
this next step, I always love it when games these days specifically call out safety tools.
Yeah, me too.
Like, I get they've been obviously, it's been a thing for a while. Lines and veils have become very much the terminology often used, and this is fantastic. But I'm very happy when I see a game that actually takes the time to go through that, to highlight the importance. And so the fact that not only is it mentioning it here, it's specifically a part of the sheet.
That's
it is a part
right?
of the sheet that you are
It's
filling out.
codified in the rules.
Yes.
Like, you must do this thing, not just like, oh, we suggest you do this thing because it will make your game better. And it even, I think there was like an example of play where they talk about playing with people you've played with a lot before, where you can be a little bit more loose with that, but it doesn't hurt to bring up at the beginning of a new game. And because a new game in a new genre like that always people have different assumptions about those things.
Exactly. Like, there is a thing where it's like, and obviously, like, when you're playing with people you've known for a while, you do get a better sense of, like, they're always going to have this as a line, this will always be a veil, and that's fine. But at the same time, people aren't static. It doesn't hurt to check in. Like, even if the process of checking in is just like, it's still going to be this, and this, and everyone goes yes, and you go, cool, let's go. But you've had that conversation.
It's really interesting, actually, because usually one of my hard lines is any sort of sexual violence or non-consent, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And there are a specific subset of games where I move that to a veil instead of a line. Something like Blades in the Dark, where everyone's playing nasty criminals, and like the setting explicitly includes prostitution and violence and all those things. And so as long as I'm not seeing it like played out by the characters in real time, I'm sort of more comfortable with it being alluded to there.
Yeah, and this is like, as you're saying, with like going into a new system that has like, it's what your lines and veils are if you're playing a fantasy game is probably going to be different to what they are if you're playing a World of Darkness game. Or here, if we're playing a police procedural, like SVU is an example of one of those ones. If you're playing SVU, then you're going in with that understanding, but at the same time, like, you can still have it as a veil. We don't want to, like, no one.
That's it.
Like, I certainly wouldn't want to spend more time than needed. It's just like, there is it's a thing that happened. We need to find the person and stop them because that's the show. But that's also why you have that conversation, which why I think it's fantastic, specifically for this game, that it's not only mentioned, it is a codified step in building this, the show that you are creating.
Steve actually calls out other people. SVU as a good example of that, because whilst it is about hunting down and prosecuting rapists, it doesn't show rape scenes. Sometimes it did depict like the setup or the aftermaths, and I think actually that was a bit of an error on that show's part, because it did establish, especially in its early seasons, I haven't watched them in years and years, but I watched a lot of SVU, and it established that we weren't going to see that. We were going to see the comeuppance of the bad person. And when they did start including those in more episodes, it became like quite uncomfortable, because it was like not the expectation of that show. Anyway, well, let's have a quick talk about. We've sort of already talked a bit about rating, like as a general TV trope thing. Yeah. Somewhere in that MMA range, but those things are a little bit different. Like, is this the one fuck per episode M rating, or is it like a bit? Is there more room for gritty violence and stuff there?
I feel like we are, from what we've been describing, we're sort of hovering in that sort of MMA
Yeah.
area, like you said. So
Would we be
I don't.
okay with teenagers watching this show? Is the real question. They're going to anyway, but
You
are
can't
we
stop them.
making it with those teenagers in mind?
I feel like, yeah, and that sort of like MA is like a 15 plus. Like if anyone, I feel like it's a show where it's like if someone's 15, then it's probably fine.
Yeah.
I feel like swearing. I mean, I personally don't have much of an issue with swearing, but I think swearing wise, it's like we're probably okay for not going overboard, but
Yeah.
like
Yeah, for sure.
we
This
don't have
isn't
to
The
sort of,
Wire
like,
where we're
count.
just swearing at each other every second
Yeah.
sentence.
But at the same time, like we probably have it where it's like when violence, the violence that does have, there probably will be violence, but it's like
Mm-hmm.
it's not usually the focus. This is not like an action show or something, so it's like
Yeah.
it's quicker and a bit more sort of like it's more about the emotional impact of what happened. So it's like this is not something's gone wrong if you've reached that point kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's not, but it's not like we don't linger on it. We don't sort of it's not like big blood splatters or whatever.
Yeah. It's not big old Jason Statham.
I feel I imagine this show that like if there's a sex scene, it's one of the ones that sort of like pans the camera away.
Yeah. I
It's
agree.
like door closes in front of the camera kind of thing. Like,
Yeah.
and I think like, the same as we were talking about SVU, it'd be a thing where it's like there may be some setup for the crime, but certain things you just don't. It can easily just be like you see something, you see the situation is bad, but you don't see what actually happens, and then it just cuts to them investigating something or them being told to go investigate something.
Yeah. There's also like a bit of a trope in Cyberpunk, particularly of like casual approach. What am I trying to say? Specifically,
Words.
recently, there's been a trope in Cyberpunk of treating sex work particularly badly, and I just don't particularly want to perpetuate that or get involved in it. So, like,
that seems
like we're not wandering around strip clubs with naked people all the time. Our characters are.
yeah, like those. Like obviously, those things exist, but like.
But like if you watch The
don't- we
Sopranos, they the whole show is half set in a strip club, and so there's just boobies in the background of shots, and that's less interesting to me than the relationship between these characters.
Yeah, I see. Yes, I agree. Yes.
Are there any particular lines or veils you'd like to raise? They have Steve's put a really nice list of things here that are often, because I know I've had lines and veils discussions before where I wish later on I've thought, I wish I'd mentioned that thing, because it's like an obvious one that none of us
and again,
just thought of in the moment, even though it's like
there is like, and this is why it's good for whenever a game actually calls it out, because it can be some stuff, and it can be stuff where it's you don't think about it because there's a degree of like, well, of course we wouldn't do that, but you
exactly.
don't know if everyone else has had that thought, particularly if you're playing with and again, it depends on how well you know people, but
like in
so it is good to have this list that you can sort of at least look through it and be like, either go through that list, but also to help you sort of maybe remind you of things you think, I was like, oh no, yeah, that would be a good thing to put a line through, or that would be something we put a veil over, or
for sure. Well, like even in our other game in Unlawful Disorder, which we play together on Lost Worlds Archive, we had to have a discussion about torture and stuff because I was playing a character who had a background in torture, and we like just had to discuss whether we were okay with that being on the screen and make sure, even especially because we're broadcasting it, that there were content warnings when that takes place, like flagging that it's obvious what's about to happen. If you don't want to watch that, tune out now. And even then, it wasn't like huge depictions of bodily harm.
it's also like when thinking about these sorts of things, it's like obviously there's specific things because of the genre this game is going to be doing, but like you get, it doesn't have to. It's like the first thing, violence or or sex or all sorts of things that people think. But like we've had games where people have been like, I don't want like spiders, or I don't want
for sure,
things that aren't as, but and the thing about the lines and veils, it's kind of like it's usually just like you don't need to justify what the line or the veil is.
No, that's it. Exactly. You don't.
It's
need
a line
to
or a veil, and everyone goes, "Cool."
Yep.
There we go. That's it.
Yeah. I think on that
unlawful disorder, we just did for my new character. I was like, I will technically at some point have certain abilities. What do we feel about that? And ultimately, we were like, nah, we're not. And I went, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Won't have those
that was
abilities.
in the sort of mind control area kind of thing, right? And so comes questions of consent. So in terms of our series and us two playing here together, I would definitely still have a hard line on sexual violence. I just don't think it is a common trope in cyberpunk settings, but you don't need it. You just don't need it, and so let's not.
It's also a lazy trope,
it's a very lazy trope.
It's lazy and harmful. It's just like, don't do it.
People can be bad guys without being rapists.
Yeah.
And
Probably just looking at the time.
Yeah.
Like
right.
I definitely, I don't know how much we're gonna be at. We probably have enough time to set up, go over like the set up the episode stuff.
That's it.
So we don't know if
we'll leave everyone on a cliffhanger by setting up an episode and not exploring
detail.
it.
Yeah. Well,
I love it. Yeah, I think like you and I have played together enough to know that we want a sort of veil over like extreme violence and stuff like that, and we've sort of said that through our rating as well.
Yeah.
And we can always use like an X card style safety tool. Like if there's something starting to come up and it makes either of us uncomfortable, just say something or stop.
Yeah.
Because it's just the two of us, and like that's a strong thing in this game is like we can be very open with that kind of communication.
Exactly.
All right. Yes, we got a little derailed there for a second, but for good purpose. I hope that discussion was of value to the people who watched it, if they watched it. Hi, people watching.
Hello, if you're watching it.
So yeah, like our next stage. That's it. Like the show is ready to go. We need like
you've got your characters. You got the show Bible.
Yeah, that's it. We can set up an episode. It's very interesting. Like I've played games that do get groups together to do this like pre-show, pre-campaign stuff or whatever. But getting it all done in like an hour and a half, despite the fact that we were like going into quite some detail. Like it's very concise, and I like that.
And it's also just like it's impressive just the amount that you get done. The amount, like this is like each of the you got 6 characters. Each of them was like 3 questions. In fact, it was 2 questions for the non-main characters.
Yeah, and yet I feel like I
one of
know
those questions
those
was their
characters
name
quite well.
Yeah, but it is done in such a way that you not only do you get an idea of who they are, but it makes things clearer about the world around them and how the show will run. Which is when you get to the show Bible, you could just, and we did do some of it randomly, but some of it was like we kind of already know the answer to this. Like we know what the hook will be from. We know what that's going to be. We know because it's just been implied before we even got there, which is just it's almost like magic when you see it happen. You're like, oh, how did I get all this stuff? It's so little.
Yeah.
And then again, we get to do it all again to set up the session, because there's tools to set up how the important people for an episode, which we'll go through now, and we can do some of it.
Yeah.
Some of it is still partly random.
That's it, right? So yeah, the next stage is we're going to draw a bunch of cards to determine things about our first episode. Do you want to draw the cards or type it in?
I can draw cards. That's fine.
All right, I will type it in then. So the first thing we do is determine the dramatis personae of our episodes. Draw a series of cards to determine each of these and write them down. The information goes onto the form labeled the docket, which I've pulled up here. Don't fill in the sections labeled branches, root, poison, and fruit. They're filled out as the episode progresses. So, the scene of the crime. First of all, draw a card and note its number and color to determine the apparent gender and profession of the corpse.
They were.
What do you got?
They worked in. They were male. They're a mask presenting retail worker.
Yeah, it's interesting because it says here red appeared as male, black as female, and I like what
I appreciate appeared.
Yeah, well, I mean the next little paragraph, because when I first read that, I was a bit like, oh, is that it? And then Steve calls it out immediately. This is, of course, a reductive view of gender, and we encourage you to explore other options, but also be careful about using trans and non-binary bodies as victims, which I think is very insightful.
And to alternatively, just ignore it.
That's it. Yeah. But yeah, I liked where you were going. Like the fact that it's like a mask appearing retail environment. Cool.
I do like that. The suit also tells you like social strata. So because it was
I see that.
They're a retail. Their professional field is retail, but they are successful and/or wealthy.
Okay.
So probably not like the store clerk. This person,
this isn't a store clerk. This is someone.
This is a person who owns like a chain of something, or is like a friend of our superior or something.
It's like that's it. It's like the senior vice president in charge of jewelry or something.
Yeah.
So we've determined who's died. The next question is how. Draw a card to determine the apparent cause of death. Oh, and a note about the cards in this game. You always return the cards back to the deck after you draw one in this, which means there is the opportunity to draw the same card again for like multiple questions. But that just leads to interesting options.
They were assaulted.
Okay, we got a 5, yeah? Okay. Interesting. So now we have our mode of death, and now we need one more thing to set the scene, a spark of randomness. Each player should get a random word by randomly opening a dictionary or using a random word generator. I love this stuff. Then the players work together to decide how those two elements are key to the crime scene. Adding a pun at the end is optional, but encouraged, of course.
Love it. I absolutely love it.
All right. Let's generate a random word. Are you ready?
I am, yep.
All right. I'm on randomwordgenerator.com, and let's see what I get.
That's where I went as well.
Amazing. All right. Oh God, my word's is gonna throw us off the deep end. What do you got for us, Sam?
I got institution.
Institution. I got absorption.
Wow. Okay.
And our upper strata retail person, professional, was assaulted. There's something about institution and absorption. I feel like absorption is sort of throwing me off the deep end in the sci-fi direction. Like I'm thinking of, like guns that melted their insides or something. And I don't know if that's quite on brand for where we're headed.
It could be more of a business in the business sense.
Yeah.
Something that in a business sense, they're being absorbed into something else.
Oh, I like this. I like this idea. Yeah, so I like this person was in charge of a particular type of products that TRC create. good old Rockwell company, and their whole department was going to be folded into another department.
Yes. Yes.
It was going to be absorbed.
Which I guess kind of also gives us institution as well, because that's kind of the institution we are in is a corporation.
Yeah, I wonder whether is there something.
But that doesn't necessarily have to be the case.
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether, like, that doesn't necessarily play into the idea of the rule is to give us like another spark, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm. That's
When I think institution, the first thing that comes to mind is something to do with like education.
It could be like that whole sort of like that was it the like the old boys club kind of thing.
Yeah, okay. So this person was part of the institution of TRC, like they were
Yeah.
somewhat. I imagine this has to be like someone Edwin plays cards with regularly or something.
It could be. Yeah, it could be.
Goes
It's not. It's
golfing,
like they
sky
are
golfing
like
with.
they're someone that is a close personal friend to our superior.
Mm-hmm.
They were part of like this, like they maybe they even were like they went to school together or something. Like they were.
Mm-hmm.
This is someone he and it's not. He wasn't being absorbed. He was the one doing absorbing.
Yeah.
He was pulling in like
Oh,
other,
yeah, that's even better.
or
Yeah.
like he was like taking over like small businesses and just merging them into his own.
Yeah, and we have like an
I
instant
think.
potential motive for a suspect there.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. I like it. So I'm gonna give our stiff a name. It's gonna be Jeffrey. Fantasy names. Do they have like a science fiction names? No, futuristic names. Yeah, here we go. Chaoson. I like this. Alright. So our stiff's name is going to be Jeffrey. Jeffrey Chaoson. We know that they worked as a corporate bigwig. But particularly in like the retail, like it was product, right?
Yeah.
So they were like, he's like a marketing executive, right?
Like it could even be something. He's like could just be director of retail.
Yeah, right. Director of retail for TRC. Do we know where they were found dead? Did I miss that somewhere? Cause of death was assault. Or is that what the retail thing should be giving us? Gender and profession. Assault. So our words should give us some sort of clue into that. So
Right.
we were like, institution was something to do with the old boys club. So what if we literally make it like a...
Yeah, it could be like outside, just outside there, some club or something. That,
Yeah, it's like a private club.
yeah.
Outside or inside? We can find out.
Yeah.
All right. We got 10 minutes left, so let's make our 4 suspects, but we can get sort of aggressive with this process. So the next step is to create our 4 suspects. There may be other suspects in the story, but the murderer will be one of these four. Though we don't actually know until we get to the end of the episode which one it will be. Alright, sign them one by one to the sheet next to clubs, diamonds, hearts, and spades. That suit listed on the sheet is for later purposes, but it doesn't matter what card you draw here. So, draw us 4 cards.
So I've drawn. I dealt myself 4 cards.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got 2 8s. So that which is employee or client. One is hearts. One is clubs.
Yeah. So similarly, clubs or diamonds, the relationship with the deceased is a negative one at first appearance, and hearts or spades is a positive one.
Yeah. So I feel like the clubs.
I can't
is like,
see those 4 cards. I don't think.
Oh.
I can click steal. And they should show up for the stream. No, that didn't work. Can you drag them out onto the docket? Yeah, nice.
There we go.
Cool. So the 8 of hearts.
So the 8 of hearts is an employee or a client, but with a positive relationship with the person.
Okay.
So probably.
This
like
feels to me like
member of the.
Well, it's employee, which makes me think under them. So maybe like a personal secretary.
Yeah, that works.
Personal secretary. Also, their occupation. The 8 of clubs means another employee or client, but who...
I wonder, if we talk about how they were like, this person is sort of taking over smaller retail outlets or something. Yeah. It could be the owner of one of these places.
Yeah. It was the person who's like was being acquired, right?
And like publicly, it's this sort of like, look at this wonderful merging of companies, and then but inside it's like, no, you're getting taken over.
And does this say to use the? Yeah, it says to use the color as gender again. So this would be a woman. Woman whose business is being acquired. Just put that there. Then for the Queen of Clubs, what do we got?
Queen is a known criminal.
Interesting. I clicked on my home page once again,
and it goes because it's got an asterisk on it, and it goes, the entries with an asterisk need clarification. In the case of drawing a jack, queen, or king, one of the suspects should be someone close to the 2 partners, a major or recurring character, or a special guest star in TV language. Jack indicates that someone on the force. Queen would be known criminals. Like everyone knows it's a criminal, but conflict also occurs there because they are powerful and can strike back at one or both of the partners or their associates. So this is like someone who is a criminal powerful enough to rival a corporation.
Yeah.
Played by someone we go, oh, that person, I love that person.
Yeah, for sure. Interesting. And what do we have for color? It's black. They had a negative. Yeah. Clubs means they had a negative relationship. It's a woman.
Yeah, negative at least at first appearances.
Yeah. Sorry. Yes. I feel like I have like this feeling because this guy is quite powerful. This person who's died, right? If he's a vice president at TRC who basically run the city, What if it's... What if known criminal is like dissidents? So it's like the leader of some anti-corporate movement.
Yeah, they're like the shadow runners or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I like it.
Yep. Alright, cool. Relation to victim.
Just noticed that on this page we were talking before about not wanting to just how the genre often treats sex workers really poorly.
Mm.
And I just realized that they called that exactly that out on
Yeah.
this page.
Yeah. There is a statement about it.
And talking about how like using same thing, using like mental illness as a plot hook, or using sex workers as just like a victim or a corpse.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just goes, you can be better than this.
You can do better.
Be better. I love it. I love it so much. Our final suspect is Jeffrey's spouse.
Interesting.
And he has a positive relationship with Jeffrey.
Yeah, nice.
With the hearts.
But so yeah, cool. Relation to victim. That's Bundo. Cool. Once we have our four suspects, we give them occupations, drawing from the same table, if you wish. But then, most importantly, we have to give them a motive. So we've got to draw cards once again. All right, let's do this last stage, and then unfortunately we will have to wrap up.
All right, so we'll move these hopefully to the right places. Just do it in order, and then we'll work out what those actually mean.
Amazing.
Yep. All right. I think that's what I'm trying to do.
Oh, yeah, I see.
Right, so our first person, who was the personal secretary, their motive is accident. Which is describing that it would potentially have been random happenstance. Which does come back where the cause of death is also just like apparent method. So if it turned out that the secretary is the criminal, then they accidentally did it and then potentially tried to cover it up and make it look like an assault.
Yeah, I see.
Because they made the point the face card ones, just as before, are sort of like you often need a little bit more
because they're potentially a bit deeper or confusing,
bit hinky. But our it
does say if you've drawn one asterisk motive, we should ignore any subsequent such draws. So you might need another one for the husband.
That is a good point. Just put that on. Draw that there. All right. So for the person being acquired, so 3 is desire. Motive was desire.
Interesting. I like that these are like quite evocative, but don't necessarily have like have deep explanations, because desire can mean.
That's sort of like it's as we've seen, it is very good at sort of, as you said, like being evocative and creating that sort of and desire can mean a lot of things.
That's it. That's it.
Speaking of the anti-corp Shadowrunner dissident leader's motive is jealousy.
What
Which
is a Shadowrunner leader jealous of a corp? Interesting. And ostensibly this person was femme. And they have a mask partner. Interesting. Very interesting.
Also, one that sort of could mean a lot of things. Our husbando, their motivation is loyalty.
Loyalty. They killed their husband who they like out of loyalty. That's got to be a strong bond of some sort. It's very interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that's right. And it says that they have what looks like a positive relationship at the start of the episode. So
yeah.
So
like, that's the thing. It's like they appear to be negative, it appears to be positive.
Yeah.
But
I like this a lot. Really interesting. Unfortunately, that's where we're going to have to end this session. Maybe we can talk about finding some time to actually play out an episode as well. But it's really interesting system, and it's so easy and accessible as well. I found that really enjoyable.
Yeah, like just getting to this point. Like I said, this has been a lot of fun.
Yeah,
and this has created something quite evocative. And then the rest of the game, like, it is that same sort of like gives you that same kind of assistance in creating scenes and creating these investigations.
That's it. And like,
and
you don't play out each episode as like a half-hour long, drama where we have to talk at each other the whole time. It's about like, what were the cool moments in between, like, what were the cool parts of each scene? What gave us that?
Yeah. So all that, and talk a lot of like going into how you run the scene. That gives you a very good example of the play, and then I think is an example of play where one of the characters is a dog.
Yeah. There's a cybernetic dog who's the straight shooter. I love that.
And then like further on, it's like if you want to do it more than just like a one shot, it's like, do you want to do like a whole season? Then there's stuff for that.
Yeah.
And then it goes into like, it's got all the, which is always great to see, is like, hero like points of reference for of shows or books or whatever that you can have for when you're thinking about these. And there's like, it's like 2 pages of stuff, and they are like, it's everything from like things you would be like, oh yeah, that makes sense, to and then like stuff you go, oh yeah, and then it just keeps going, and you're like, oh right. So you get stuff like Good Omens, you get Lois and Clark.
That's right. Yeah, of course.
Those are very different shows.
Yeah,
yeah.
For sure.
You could very much. They are any kind of show where there are 2 people who are slightly different,
and they're slightly. They've got that tension of like.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Because it seems to me like it also doesn't have to be about solving murders, but that it was interesting to me that is what that is quite hard coded into the game. I wonder whether
and it's kind of like that's the go-to of this style, and it's usually that's probably the vast majority, but at the same time, because you could, and like once you get the hang of it, you can start. You don't need to stick to these lists. You're like, the
victim could instead of being a dead body, being a different crime.
It doesn't have to be a victim. It could just be a situation. It could be an issue that needs to be resolved, or anything that requires like some kind of like investigation in some definition of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then you can play that out.
Yeah, for sure.
And
I think that's because there's like a specific mechanic for inserting scenes that are about the overarching plot arc rather than the episode's plot arc as well, which I think is really interesting. And I hope we get a chance to play them out at some point, but I do have to wrap us up there. So, Sammy, where can people find you on the internets or elsewhere?
You can find me on Twitter at @_RealSammyP. You can find both of us on the Lost World Archives channel for Twitch and on YouTube, where we are currently playing Unlawful Disorder, a open legends campaign, where we are approaching, I guess, the end of this, of like, I guess, the arc that we were on. We are very much approaching beginning the next step of our particular adventure, so it's a good time to come and check it out.
Yep, highly recommend.
And I have some other things, but I have a bunch of things that aren't in announceable stages yet.
Yeah, so I know that feeling.
Keep an eye on Twitter, I guess.
All right, amazing. Yeah.
How about yourself?
Yeah, me. I'm Jamie Collette. I'm a voice actor and director and other such things. You can find me also on Twitter at Muffin Manifesto or at my website jamie-collette.com. You can see me on Unlawful Disorder with Sam. You can also currently see me in King Henry IV by William Shakespeare on streamedshakespeare.com, though by the time this goes out you might have to get the VOD, which is very cheap, video on demand for only like $5 to see any of our past shows. And I've directed and been in a lot of them.
I think it's the other thing, I don't know, speaking of like not me being sure when this will come out, I do know that the Kickstarter for this game is currently going. It might have ended by the time this video is made public, but the Kickstarter has been successful.
Oh, amazing! That's great news, because I know it was sort of like it was sort of like in that dip that happens after the first big push and whatever last time I looked. So I'm glad that it has already been completed. Amazing.
It is.
I think Steve is hoping to get this video out, or some of it at least, out before the Kickstarter ends. I don't know how soon that is.
That was my understanding as well, but I think it is on the tail end of the Kickstarter. So if the
Kickstarter's still going, go buy this game. We had fun playing it.
There'll be links. There'll be links in descriptions to go to there.
If you found this, you should probably have also found partners. It should be easy to do.
Probably be able to make the leap, but I also highly recommend it. Like I've definitely put my gut. I backed it because I love it. I love what it does,
and
I love what you can. As I said, like it's very like. It's on the surface you can be like, oh, it's going to make a police procedural, and then it's like, no. It's so much broader than that, and so easy to create something amazing.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Sam, and
thank you very much.
Thank you all for watching, and check out Tin Star Games.
See ya.